welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. Before we get to the show, let's get the pleasantries out of the way.
First of all, our website. If you want more information about our little podcast, go to wearethecontrarians.com. That's where you'll find links to our old episodes, to our Patreon channel, and to our awesome Contrarians merch.
You can show your support by buying a Contrarians mug or a pillow.
I like the laptop bags myself.
Second of all, if you enjoy the show, tell your friends. Or even go a step further and leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you use to listen to your podcasts.
Finally, if you want to reach out directly to us, that's what social media is for. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Contrarian Prime, or check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/Contrarian Prime.
Julio runs our official Twitter account at Contrarian Prime, but if you want to give me a piece of your mind or just want to banter about pro wrestling, you can follow me at Contrarian Alex.
That's it. That's our intro.
Now, time for the show.
This is our lesson.
And we're recording for Contrarians Corner for Double Indemnity.
Hello, and welcome back to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined as always by my co-host and co-pilot on this never-ending travel of the contrary, Julio Oliveira. Julio, going way back in time tonight, and we're also testing the waters of, waters that have offered varying results for you personally in the noir genre.
Yes. Are we going to the granddaddy of them all as far as noir? I mean, I know there's been noirs before Double Indemnity, but most of the quotes, most of the comments, the lore around this movie hail it as just the ultimate noir, the prime example of noir. This is where you point to when you want to say noir. When you explain noir to someone, it's like, this is it. Double Indemnity.
That's
black and white.
It's definitely a measuring stick. Quite a decorated film, both contemporaneously and historically. And so it should be an interesting one to discuss. The reason this is appearing on your podcatcher timelines is it's the latest demand from one of our wonderful patrons, and we'll get to that here momentarily. Julio, 1944. Not often we go back this far in time for what we do here, so kind of excited to see what the end result comes to be.
Yeah, what's the oldest we've gone back? I was trying to think. I mean, obviously we did Modern Times long time ago, and that is when movies were just transitioning into talkies.
Mm-hmm.
So that's obviously a big deal. But then we did The African Queen, which feels like it was kind of an old movie. I mean, I knew it was old because of Bogart, but
yeah, that's from the 50s.
Okay, so just a decade removed from this. Man, that's it, I think. the Contrarians not known for really
pre-70s
going back to the classics.
Well, I mean, old by young people's standards, but typically when we go before the 70s, it's kind of a big deal for us.
Yeah, which is kind of funny in a way, because there is a lot of revered movies from around this time that in a way they're just fertile ground to mine for our Contrarians gimmick.
Mm-hmm. Well, Billy Wilder makes his debut here on the Contrarians. Honestly, looking over his filmography, it may not be the last time. Actually, to be fair, a film of his has been discussed on the Contrarians before. It just wasn't the film we covered. He directed The Front Page, starring Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon and Susan Sarandon. The movie, of course, that spawned the idea for Dolomite.
If we stretch the criteria as far as what do you have to do to qualify as a movie that's been discussed in the Contrarians, then yes.
He has been covered on here before.
But I'll do you one better, Alex. A good while ago, I did a QVR for Sunset Boulevard on our Patreon channel.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. That's a little more of a Billy Wilder exploration.
We have that, and then Sabrina, 7-Year Itch, Some Like It Hot. There is an opportunity for him to appear in the Contrarians once more in the future. But Double Indemnity is the name of the game today, starring Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck. Julio, is this the first film of either of theirs that you've seen?
Yes. I didn't know who these people were. And you know what? I will not be shamed for it. It's a big world out there. There's a lot of movies. And for what it's worth, at least I had heard of Barbara Stanwyck. So there's that. Fred McMurray had no idea.
I have more of a familiarity with Barbara Stanwyck as well. But McMurray just has that definitive, golden age of Hollywood noir, chiseled jaw, slicked back
White.
hair, face. Well, of course. Well, otherwise, why bother, And an endless filmography that guy has as well. So before we get into why we're discussing Double Indemnity, let's just go ahead and get out of the way what it is we do here on the Contrarians. Here on the Contrarians, we like to rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. That is our battle cry. Find a movie on Rotten Tomatoes that is highly rated, a lot of times known as certified fresh, and accompanied with that lovely, delightful trademarked, that intellectual property, that little logo that they like to show off. What was I watching? Oh, I watched The Big Sick last night, and that Blu-ray cover has the certified fresh logo on it. It knocked it down a whole half star in my Letterboxd review.
That tomato staring right at you.
Mocking me. And what we do with those movies is bring them down to size, discuss maybe some of the overrated acting, overrated direction, storytelling choices, bad score, poor supporting acting, whatever we really need to do, whatever we can sink our teeth into to make a claim that this movie may not be all it's cracked up to be, being that Double Indemnity is 97%, a strong, powerful, erect 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. We will be making a case for maybe why this movie doesn't really deserve the legacy that it has. Conversely, on alternating episodes, we'll find a movie that's lowly rated, shoot for about 30% and below, and as you could guess, make a case for that film's positive merit. Find whatever we need to make a case that, hey, this isn't as bad as these critics have come together to say on Rotten Tomatoes. Be it bold storytelling, underrated acting, score, soundtrack, like I said, really whatever it takes to get the job done. We do this all for two reasons, namely, one, shit's subjective. Art in general, you can be as over the moon about something as you want to be, or as cynical and negative about if you really truly set your mind to it. Number two, which has been highlighted recently in an article Julio shared on our Twitter page, the Rotten Tomatoes system has many flaws, and I think in a lot of cases people misconstrue sometimes what these ratings can mean. 97% doesn't mean that 97% of the movie's good. And I know I make that joke from time to time because I've had people tell me that's what they thought it meant.
That last 3%, the end credits really dropped the ball.
That comprises the first half of an episode. We call that Contrarians Corner. Julio, if listeners want to know how we really feel about our movie du jour, in this case, Double Indemnity, they just have to stick around for part two, the second half.
That is correct. Part 2 of every episode, aptly titled Real Talk, is where we tell you how we really feel about the movie. We forget about the gimmick, we don't worry about the Tomatometer score anymore, and we just tell you our true feelings. In this case, about Double Indemnity, which is a first watch for me, and it was a first watch for you as well, Alex?
Yes, sir.
How did you watch it? Because I having the foresight of like looking at the schedule a few months ago, I actually snatched Double Indemnity during the last Criterion sale.
Nice. I just rented on YouTube.
Did you get the supplements as part of the rental?
I did not. Now I'm jealous.
So yes, Real Talk is where you find out how we feel, and you will also find out how the patron that demanded this movie from us, how he feels. He was kind enough to send us an audio clip explaining his relationship with Double Indemnity. And this is Mr. John Keating, a longtime friend of the show, longtime patron now, and also the man responsible for writing The Concessionaires Must Die, which is a movie that if you've been with us for a while, you've heard both Alex and I talk about.
Mm-hmm.
It may come up again in Real Talk. For that, you have to wait until the second half of the show. First, Contrarians Corner. This movie is 97%, so we're going to tear it to pieces.
I killed Dietrichson. Me, Walter Neff, insurance agent, 35 years old, unmarried, no visible scars. Until a while ago, that is.
All right, Julio, 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. As we've mentioned already, this movie has a legacy that precedes it. A movie that I knew of before it was thrown on our desk here just because of its legacy. So I imagine you didn't have much of a hard time finding positive reviews.
No, flooded with fresh tomatoes. I just had to grab a handful, and sometimes I try to go with some sort of theme. For Double Indemnity, at least a couple of these quotes fall under the category of pretentious critics.
You don't say.
Yeah. Turns out that when you pull out a movie from the 40s that is well regarded by, I hate to say it, but by film Twitter, you're going to find a lot of big words on the quotes. For example, Chuck Bowen from Slant Magazine says, Double Indemnity is a ruthless and poignant cornucopia of the details that command our lives.
I'm bored.
Now, cornucopia is one of those words that I think that we've used here on the show before, but not in a way that it's not like we're taking ourselves seriously when we use it.
Oh, yeah.
This guy combined cornucopia with the details that command our lives. What the hell does that have to do with the story of Double Indemnity? It's about insurance. But not to be outdone, Ian Thomas Malone from ianthomasmalone.com says, the murder isn't the result of a battle between good and evil, but rather a natural response to a system that had no place for either Phyllis or Neff, both pawns in someone else's game. Capitalism is the true villain of ...
Dude, I know you got that just to annoy me. Like that.
I did.
Yes, that. Oh. Where do I
it's about
fucking
capitalism,
start?
at least.
Yeah. What's the date on that? I mean, it would be funny if that was a contemporary review.
Yeah, that's like March 2023. This is from June 27, 2022, Alex.
Okay. Sounds about right.
Like through the looking glass of the Trump years.
That is, there's not much more annoying than someone who watches a movie and tries to force like their idea of what it is. I mean, you know, you can interpret art any way you want, but sometimes it's my John Carpenter thing about, oh, Halloween's about male oppression against females. And he's like, no, it's fucking not. Like, so when I hear people that have some really annoying self-indulgent spin on a movie that clearly isn't about that, I don't know. It's a bit much. Continue.
Well, I'm going to turn down the pretentiousness a little bit. We're going to go with T.C. Kemp from Birmingham Post, who says, it does not engage the emotions mercifully. Rather, it invites the laying of odds as to whether the guilty parties will get away with it. Put get away with it in quotation marks. So I wouldn't ever say that a movie that doesn't engage the emotions is a good one. That's a positive thing. I want movies to engage my emotions. That's why I watch stuff. Like if I don't want to engage, I mean, that's why am I watching? You know, I understand that there's a concept of just having something playing in the background, but I think that if you have something playing in the background and not engaging with it, then it's not worth writing about.
Yeah. No argument here.
DC Kemp, you're wrong. Go away. And finally, we're going to close with Roy Stewart from the Daily Record UK, who says, Double Indemnity is positively the best murder film I've ever seen. And it's good, old, straight, old villainous murder without any psychological alleyways to get lost in. This man likes his characters, his murderers, simple, not complex.
Doesn't like getting lost in alleys.
Also, no. He likes it when it's just wide open spaces. And it's all, well, that's probably why he likes Double Indemnity, because it's all black and white. No shades of gray here. So with that, Alex, it's time to bring Billy Wilder down to our level. Let's see what we have to say about Double Indemnity, the movie.
The murder's never perfect. Always comes apart sooner or later. And where two people are concerned, it's usually sooner.
So, Julio, Double Indemnity is a provision for payment of double the face amount of an insurance policy under certain conditions. For example, when a death occurs as the result of an accident.
So it's not exclusive to trains.
I mean, honestly, what is there to say about this that people wouldn't already know? If you haven't seen this movie, you've seen this movie. This guy gets swept up in this situation because he finds himself fawning over this woman. There's death, deceit, betrayal, sex, and in the end, you know, he gets caught because there are no clean getaways, as both the taglines of Drive and No Country for Old Men told us.
That's the tagline of the Criterion as well.
But we kind of start from the end because we begin with our main character, Fred McMurray, playing Walter Neff. He's obviously in bad shape. He's sweating, and we don't really see what the cause of this issue is, but he's recording a confessional that he committed a murder. And Julio, you know, we've done reindeer games on here before and several other movies that start with the end. I guess this was kind of a fresh concept at the time, but man, watching through 2023 lenses, this is played out.
Well, also because you need to know how to deploy this sort of narrative device. You can't just explain, you can't just give me everything on those first 5 minutes. And this dude does. He goes, I killed him. I didn't get the money. I didn't get the girl. Okay, well, why am I watching? You already told me everything that happens. Like with Affleck, at least you kind of want to know what happened. Here, it doesn't really. What's the point? And honestly, he doesn't say it right away, but you can tell he's dying. Like, could you tell, Alex, even though they don't show the blood at first?
I mean, yeah, he was in rough shape. And I imagined, because I've seen movies at this point in my life, that his testimonial was like it was his last will and testament. He knows he's going out, so he wants to get it all on the record.
And yeah, he's leaving the longest voicemail ever recorded on film. Fred McMurray, Alex. Noir at Helms. Can you see it?
Maybe. I mean, he's a bit more classically, movie good looking than Ed Helms. But he didn't make me laugh nearly as hard as Andy Bernard does.
He's just, he's at the center of this movie, Alex, and I was not charmed, and I think I was supposed to be charmed by him. Is this just because I have an adverse reaction to men in the 40s, or is it just that he's not a good actor?
I mean, if this is your first time listening, Julio does have an aversion to noir in general. So I think one of the things we've discussed is just these characters are sometimes very dumb. We can see what's coming before they can, and it's frustrating as a viewer to watch. In this case, he's just blinded by love or lust, as it were. But
lust. He knows her for like 5 minutes, and then he's like, I love you, baby.
But then like halfway through the movie, he learns that she's crazy and killed someone before, but then he's just like, nah, not my girl. She didn't do that.
We're in too deep now.
And our object of desire, Barbara Stanwyck, is introduced immediately as a few weeks earlier, Neff meets with the alluring Phyllis Diedrichson during a house call to remind her husband to renew his automobile insurance policy. They flirt until Phyllis asks about taking out a policy on her husband's life without his knowledge. All right, so, I mean, in a time where we discuss red flags just based on someone's 2-sentence long Tinder profile, this guy can't see like an issue with this. She's like, hey, how much scratch can I get without this dude knowing that, he may be dying soon? Let's just be hypothetical for a minute. But we do get a wonderful pun of she answers the door, the maid answers the door, but she comes out like in a robe, and we get the play on words about insurance. He's like, I just want to make sure you're fully covered. I was like,
Such a charmer, this Fred McMurray.
A bit better than the original line of, he said, I just want to see your tits. That was the original line that was in the movie.
That's the director's cut.
It didn't test well in some of the Bible Belt.
So he's so Frank McMurray here. Walter Neff, from the beginning, as soon as he walks into that house, just thinking with his dick. He's just letting his crotch lead the way. What makes it worse is that he does figure out what she's implying. It's not that, oh, he was too dumbstruck by her beauty, her sexiness, and so he unknowingly helped her plan the murder of her husband. No, he knows. He's smart enough. He's been around long enough that he knows that she's planning to, or she's implying that she wants to kill her husband. Mm-hmm. And yet he can't stop himself. he still eventually gets involved with her. It's that is exactly, Alex. That is when I just start having those issues with noir, where I'm like, dude, it's the combination of you making terrible decisions and you having a voiceover that just won't stop, where you explain to me how bad the decisions are. You're fully aware of what's happening and you can't stop yourself. Mm-hmm. I guess in this day and age, the concept of the femme fatale it's pretty outdated in the sense that
I think the death nail was the film Femme Fatale from 2002 with Rebecca Romaine Stamos. I think that was when, we all kind of wised up to the idea of the concept. But this was, 60 years before that, so I guess they get a pass. Right.
It was 60 years before Brian De Palma just made the ultimate statement about what it's like to fall under the spell of a woman that will destroy your life.
Get to see Antonio Banderas just going to town on Rebecca Romaine Stamos.
You do not get to see that here, which is warranted. I think that we needed to see what the sex was like to really understand why Fred McMurray is acting so carelessly.
Our patrons know from our Blue is the Warmest Color episode that the intense sex scenes in that both Julio and I justify as paying off when you see the intense heartbreak that Adele goes through in that, because it's like, man, can relate to that. You're a relationship just driven on sex. But, you know, to be fair, fucking Adele doesn't kill someone in that.
Emotionally, she does.
Nor does Emma ask her to. Imagine how awesome it would have been if that was the turn that movie took in the fucking 7th hour. Is Léa Seydoux turns to Adele Exarchopoulos and just like, hey, I want you to kill this person for me.
And she does.
Yes. But then still ends up being alone at the end, walking home alone.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. If the idea of a femme fatale, or well, it's a lot harder. Is there even an equivalent, like a male counterpart to the femme fatale? Is there like a male fatale, or is it just that we've accepted, rightly so, that women are too smart to fall for that? So it's always going to be the guy. You know.
Did you see Barbie?
That's fair. That's a much needed reminder for this generation. All right, but still, it's okay to leave some stuff to the imagination. I think that our imagination can do wonders, can really go a long way when it comes to making a story work. But sometimes you need to show us. And it's even worse when what you're showing us, it's the opposite of what you should be showing us. And by that, I mean that the relationship between Neff and Phyllis, it seems so chaste physically. And of course, yes, I know it was the 40s. They couldn't get away with a sex scene, right? But I would like at least an implication, something, right? Instead, there's a moment where the camera they hug, and then he just says his voiceover that's like never ends. Says something like, we just sat there holding each other. I'm like, no, you didn't. We know. For this story to make sense, you two have to have been having sex for like 6 hours. And then you come out of there like, you're right, we have to kill him.
Comes out, you know, with his hair all askew, and he's it would go to the clock on the wall, and it showed spinning for hours. And then he comes out all sweaty with his hair askew, and he's like, he's a dead man, baby.
He has like the fresh scratches on his chest, just bleeding a little. His lower lip is bleeding.
She, of course, I mean, she's smoking throughout most of the movie, but this is where we get the shot of her, you know, her hair's all matted and she's just smoking a cigarette like, oh, what have I gotten myself into?
Well, some of the double entendre that they use in the dialogue. I mean, if you're gonna get away with that, if you're okay with those sort of like implications, double meanings, why are you not okay with it doing some of that visually, right?
Oh man,
again, I don't have to see
time
like
Hollywood flirting too. It's like, this isn't how fucking people talk, all right?
There's a speed limit in this state, Mr. Neff. 45 miles an hour.
How fast was I going, officer?
I'd say around 90.
Suppose you get down off your motorcycle and give me a ticket.
Suppose I let you off with a warning this time.
Suppose it doesn't take.
Suppose I have to whack you over the knuckles.
Suppose I bust out crying and put my head on your shoulder.
So Neff is picking up what she's putting down here, the idea of this accident insurance policy without his knowledge. He knows where this is going. Oh, I did write too that they live in this fucking lavish mansion in Los Angeles, and he's like, this must have cost $30,000. And you couldn't buy a fucking toilet in Austin for $30,000 anymore. You can thank Joe Rogan for the inflation.
keep Austin weird, Alex.
Yeah. Okay.
And keep those insurance salesmen weirdos.
Now, if we want to talk about capitalism, that Austin, we can talk about it in that context. But moving on. Neff deduces she is contemplating murder and initially wants no part of it, but eventually devises a plan to murder her husband and trigger the double indemnity clause, which would double the payout. I do like here how innocent the Wikipedia write-up is. Initially wants no part of it, but eventually devises a plan. They just left out that after she ravaged his body, he came to seeing her way of things.
She shows up at his house. She won't take no for an answer.
She will not. And, it's
so,
all...
Again, Alex, I know you're a gentleman and everything, but that's in that scenario, they're not behaving like human beings, right? Like even in the 40s, I think that if somebody that you've been flirting with shows up uninvited in the middle of the night at your house, it doesn't take like 20 minutes of conversation before you, one, agree to kill the spouse and two, like get to it sex-wise.
Yes. That's also, in my experience, an indicator that things are eventually going to end in a volatile way, is the showing up in the middle of the night to get down to brass tacks. And I've been on both sides of that. So, I'm not saying that I'm innocent in all this.
You've been the one with the gun and the one getting shot.
Yes. And he does tell her, which probably is a line I've actually used, "I'm crazy about you, baby." Gussied it up a bit more than that, but this all stems from, initially we think she just hates her husband, says he beats her, he's a drunk, etc., etc. He does in no time. The extent of the convincing is like, come on, no, please. All right. That's, it's tantamount to convincing your buddy to go to the bar to watch the game, or, "Hey, you want to go to Whataburger?" "No, I shouldn't." "You sure?" "Yeah, come on." And he, which leads to his retort, "We're going to do it, and we're going to do it right." And so now he's like all in, hashtag all in, all elite wrestling on this. And he's ready to just go fucking, they devise a really good plan too. It's the best part of the movie as far as like engaging and both intellectually and emotionally. The entire sequence of explaining how they pulled off the murder. That's the peak, right? That's the phone conversation. They peak on the phone here.
Easily. Did you get the feeling that Billy Wilder and Raymond Chandler, maybe kind of as they were doing this, they're like, in real life, we could probably get away with this. Should we make the movie, or should we try to defraud an insurance company?
So this is loosely based on a true story. There's a novel written. Yeah, there's a novel written called Double Indemnity by James M. Cain, and that was based on the murder of Albert Snyder by Ruth Snyder. And I haven't read the extent of that story to see, how closely it follows. It could also just be, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is based on a true story just because the guy wore skin. But
bored housewife manipulated dumb insurance salesman into killing her husband. That's the headline, and that's it.
Yeah, the case was inspiration for the novella Double Indemnity, which was adapted for the screen by Billy Wilder. Also, Guns N' Roses' 1981 album Use Your Illusion features, as part of the enclosed artwork, a photo of the band posing in front of an oversized reproduction of the Daily News headline photograph announcing Ruth Snyder's execution. All right.
Just throwing up like the double horns.
Yeah. But circling back to your original question, even if this is based on a true story, they probably are thinking to themselves, because from what I read, just a little bit of the writing relationship was contentious. So I imagine what they're both thinking is, I need to watch my back getting out of here tonight. And,
trust no one.
I need to know how much Paramount has me insured for on this set, because this could get dicey real quick.
Maybe get rid of that double indemnity clause.
So with this plan being set into motion, Walter begins to have second thoughts about it. Maybe not second thoughts, but he's reminded that Diedrichson, he doesn't have a first name, does he? He's just Diedrichson.
Husband.
Man number 2. But he has a daughter. And when he's talking about this, and it shows, I think initially like her back profile, and it's like a full grown woman. Like I was thinking it was going to be like a little kid or like Shirley Temple or some shit. And it's, early 20s.
Alex, the mystery of how old this woman was way more compelling than the mystery of, what happened with the murder. Because you're right. Like when they talk about her like she's a little girl. Then you see her and she is an adult. But when she talks like a little girl, and she behaves like a little girl. It comes out at some point in the movie that she's in her 20s. Like she has to be in her mid-20s, which kind of like matches her appearance. But she's acting like she has a curfew, and she has to ask her dad for permission to go out. So at first, the first half of the movie, I thought that we were just watching one of those classic instances of, she's supposed to be a teenager, but they cast an adult because that's just movie magic. Yeah. Then when it turned out that, it's just she's supposed to be in her 20s, she's just a bad actress. That didn't make it any better.
So yeah, Jean Heather was the name of the actress who played Lola. She would have been, 22 or 23 at the time this movie was made. And, by 1944 standards, or this was in 38, that means like your life is like half over. So
She's an old maid.
Exactly. Like, she should have been married 6 kids deep by now. It is just kind of a funny reveal.
This is her last hurrah.
Well, naturally, when you see how old she is, and she's a very pretty young lady, your thought immediately goes to, oh man, is Walter going to like jump ship here?
Well, I mean, that's, I guess we can discuss in a little bit if that happens or not. But in the meantime, I think that a bigger point to make is that she is a 20-something that is playing a 20-something that just acts like a little girl. The dude that she's dating has to be in his 40s. And how old is he supposed to be? Yes. When he showed up, I was like, is this her boyfriend's dad? What happened?
And he's a real asshole, too. He'd be more appreciative. It's, she's this beautiful young woman, and come on, get over here. I ain't got no friends. I don't want none.
Beautiful young woman with a beautiful stepmother. It's like, dude, don't mess this up.
No, that's the dream, man.
That's porn in the making.
I was about to say,
just ask Neff.
Play your cards right. It's going to work out well for you.
The old man is on his way out.
I wonder if I know what you mean.
I wonder if you wonder.
We get a recap of the killing, as we mentioned. It's this plan that involves Dietrichson needing to take a train, but on the way over there, they're going to kill him, I assume, by strangulation. And
no, he breaks his neck. I thought it was strangulation, but then when they talk about the autopsy, they're like, he broke his neck.
You're right. It looks like it when they film it.
It's because you don't see it, Alex. Much like the sex scenes, just like, it's not important.
It's what's implied that's way more dangerous to the mind. So Walter then dresses in the same clothes and gets on this train and makes people think that Dietrichson is on there. And then when the moment comes, he jumps off the train, and then they move Dietrichson's body onto it to make people think he fell overboard and died on the train tracks. They get in the getaway car, and it's, I guess, a moment of levity as we learn that women don't know how to handle cars. Barbara Stanwyck is unable to start this car, so Fred McMurray basically just like, step aside, sweetheart. This is a man's job, and is able to start the car quickly and easily, and off they go. My note says, LOL, women drivers.
She can safely be an accomplice to the murder of her husband, but God, don't let her drive by herself.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't let her fill up the car. She'll put regular in it when it needs premium. That's the one joke we didn't get.
She'll flood the engine.
Yes. Then a man has to come in and do a man's job.
I was like, is it not enough that I just killed your husband? Have to fix your car too?
Walter has, I guess, a bit of a premonition, you would say. He knows that he's going to... He tells this in his voiceover. He knows he's going to get caught, and he just feels the crushing anxiety of him coming over. When he gets into work, Norton, the company president, believes the death was a suicide, but Keyes scoffs at the idea.
Norton played by the noir version of Kurt Fuller.
Oh, that's a tremendous callback there. Brell.
Yes.
We haven't talked about Keyes yet, so let's go ahead and do that. Barton Keyes, played by Edward G. Robinson.
The noir version of Ernest Borgnine.
If you've never seen a movie from the 1940s, the way Edward G. Robinson portrays the character of Barton Keyes is what you think movies from the 1940s are like. He's got a bit of a scowl, very dramatic facial features, very pronounced facial features, I should say. Has some big monologues, but he also has that really quick gift of gab style talking. He's easily
big movements.
He's the MVP of this from an acting perspective, because everyone else is just kind of a bit over the top, and kind of understandably so. But he reins everybody in, and yeah, he's just acting with a capital ACTINNG. But he's on fire in this scene too, because Norton is going to tell Phyllis, your husband killed himself. We're not going to do anything for you. And Keyes essentially says, I would like to see that. And then when this meeting goes horribly, he just accosts him for what an idiot he is.
So we get 2 Oscar clips here, back to back, right? Because first we get Barbara Stanwyck's when she's being harassed by Norton, who's telling her, look, the police may have ruled this an accident, but we don't believe so. And we are an insurance company, so we hold the truth. We believe that it was a suicide. And since it was a suicide, you don't get paid double indemnity, single indemnity. You don't get paid anything. And you think that
You get no indemnity, ma'am.
yes, you get zero indemnity. And then she fights back. And it is a moment where for a moment, I was fooled into thinking that the movie had been kind of downplaying her power, the power of Barbara Stanwyck, just so that we could have this moment where she rises to the occasion and she fights back and she tells them, you know what, fuck you. Expect to hear from my lawyers. And then she storms off. And that's great. And then that's followed by Edward G. Robinson's Oscar clip. Right, like back to back, where he explains to Norton, explains to his boss why everything he said was wrong. It's like, it was not a suicide, you dumbass, because of this, and I have the figures, and I've been working this job for like 30 years. I know what I'm talking about. You're an idiot. And then he punctuates this by grabbing a glass of water and drinking it so fast it spills over his chest. And I was like, really?
He does have my favorite line of the movie in this scene also, in which Norton is, outlining his thesis on why this is a suicide. And he goes, and that man on the train, what was his name? And Keyes goes, his name was Jackson. Probably still is. Yeah, you're right. I had the note I was moving forward here. That rant where he's just citing all these statistics and like, who the fuck are you? Just motherfucks him. He's like, who do you think you are? I've been doing this for 37 years. He said, what does he actually say? 26. That's what it is. The little man.
Yeah. When it's all over, did you find yourself wishing that the movie was about this dude instead?
About Keyes?
Yeah. I want Keyes on the case. I just want, because a lot of noir for me, I guess, in my limited experience, I relate it to detectives, to people trying to figure out a mystery. Like, that's not what this is. This is like the mystery. So, like I said, at the beginning of the movie, they tell us exactly what's going to happen. And now it's just a matter of watching exactly how Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck are going to fuck it all up. And it would be a lot more engaging for me if we were following the cool character, Keyes, just entangling this. Right? This mysterious death, this suspicious insurance claim, and then he just goes listening to his little voice inside his head and just trying to figure out what happened. And then at the end, he catches McMurray. But no, we have to go back to this boring dude that is just interested in getting laid.
I mean, can relate,
Right, but I want my movies to be aspirational. I don't want to think with my dick. I want to catch the killer. Also, do you think that this movie is just highly regarded by insurance agents everywhere?
Or it's like one of the more scrutinized ones? Like, what's trying to think of a movie that was commercially and critically successful, but people within the industry it was based upon. Twister. Twister is one that, like, everyone loved Twister, but I remember having like a geology class maybe in college. And the professor brought it up at one point in time and just like went off on Twister and how historically inaccurate it is. So I'm imagining like
that's not how tornadoes work.
Well, the biggest thing was the belt that held them, like in the F5 tornado. They tied the belt to the pole or some shit, and it managed to protect myself and Helen Hunt. It was freaking sweet. But I like life insurance conferences across the world annually host a screening of this movie where they all laugh at like the inaccuracies of what Neff and Keyes are citing. Or they do that thing.
There's a YouTube channel. There's a YouTube channel that is like the real insurance agent or something, and he just breaks apart the movie.
Man, or imagine like the pompous film snob insurance agent who the first date is he has someone over to his apartment to watch Double Indemnity and provides commentary the entire time, not only about the film and the state of the movie industry at the time and now, but also explaining the things that are correct and inaccurate about the processes the insurance agents are following. That would be the worst human being that has ever lived.
But when he finds somebody that sticks around to the end of the day, then he knows he's found the one.
That's at the end of every night. I'm lonely. God bless, man. I could do that with Ready to Rumble, so I am not one to throw stones. All right, now shit starts to unravel as Lola, who we mentioned, Dietrichson's daughter and the stepdaughter of Phyllis, tells Neff she is convinced that Phyllis is not only behind her father's death, but also the death of Lola's mother, who died under suspicious circumstances when Phyllis was her nurse. Neff begins seeing Lola to keep her from taking the suspicions to the police. I mean, as you do, right?
It's seeing in quotation marks.
I mean, that they're going out on the town. They're having, it's not like they're just going and getting ice cream and walking around the city square. They're in his car. They're presumed dancing. I mean, they look really happy. Who knows?
Dancing in quotation marks.
Well, we also learned, too, at this point that Phyllis has been giving it to Nino on the reg, too. And she's convinced that Nino's not going to be long for this world either.
Why are we not seeing these things? Why can't we? I know I just sound like a broken record complaining about the fact that they don't show us graphic sex scenes in a movie from 1940s. But man, the story works so much better if you actually see that instead of them just pussyfooting around the fact that these adults are having sex. But also, after praising her Oscar clip where Barbara Stanwyck really gives it to the man and tells the insurance company to come get it if they want it. Now we find out that she's as much of an idiot as Fred McMurray, because Lola says that she caught her parading around her widow dress before her husband was dead. Like she was rehearsing how she was going to grieve.
Yeah, like I'm a big whore for outfits and stuff, like especially if I'm going on vacation. So like when I went to Chicago last week, I had like laid out all my outfits and stuff. But that's,
I mean, you hadn't killed anyone.
I was about to say that's not what you do when you plan on killing someone, and then I've never premeditated what I'm going to wear at someone's funeral. You know why? Because that's psychotic, suspicious behavior.
It's a little weird at best, and in terrible taste as well. Just somebody walks in, and it's like 3 weeks later, they think back, they're like, wait a second, did I see Alex just looking at himself in the mirror wearing the exact same outfit that he wore to the funeral?
Seeing how his ass looked in those slacks, that was a bit weird.
Walter, I've been living with this little man for 26 years. He's never failed me yet. There's got to be something wrong.
Keyes is beginning to piece it together. He shows up at Walter's apartment and begins to discuss the possibility that it's a murder, and then essentially outlines exactly what Walter and Phyllis did to kill him. So Walter and Phyllis are obviously becoming a bit weary and anxious about this whole thing.
Yeah, Keyes shows up. He's like, I was watching this movie on TV, directed by Billy Wilder. This is, by the way, after he has given Neff the worst new job pitch ever. When he's like, hey, would you like a promotion where you make less money than what you're making now? I
forgot about that. What does he say? They kind of quibble like a married couple in this moment here. It's very brief.
Yeah, he's like, how would you like to make $50 less? I think that the relationship between these two, between Neff and Keyes, is a lot more entertaining than the relationship between Neff and Phyllis, because here with Neff and Keyes, we get to see all of it, whereas with Phyllis and then with Lola, the filmmakers are just hiding some stuff away, and that doesn't work as well as just seeing these two, like, you're right, bickering like a married couple, but also you can tell that they care for each other. Neff is always lighting the cigars for Keyes. Keyes
using those strike anywhere matches that make anybody look cool.
I didn't know those things existed until when I watched this movie. I'm like, that is something amazing. A little bit of technology from the 40s that I was not aware of.
I think you can still get them. They're just not as easily accessible.
Insurance agents only.
They hand them out at the conferences. Did you get your matches? Okay. Hurry on in. They're screening Double Indemnity.
We got the guy with the YouTube channel to do the commentary.
So as this anxiety and just general concern builds, they meet up in public. I guess somewhat disguised. He has a hat on and she has glasses. But this is where we learn that, she played him. She drops the, pain and gain. That's what Mark Wahlberg and The Rock have a back and forth on. She just tells him, you killed him. I'm just the one, I gave you the idea. And it becomes a back and forth of, if one of us goes down, I'm taking you with me, motherfucker.
Yeah, they stare at each other from across the grocery aisle. This is something that I noticed, and it started irritating me, and then every time it happened, it irritated me more. And that is that, I don't know if this was Wilder or Chandler, or maybe both of them, but this is it's a quippy story, and they kind of move fast, and, I wouldn't say that it's super depressing or anything, but they do like to just interject these minor characters that are played very broadly. And for example, here when they're at the grocery store and they're having their kind of like spy meeting, there's this woman that gets in the middle just so that she could ask Fred McMurray to hand her the baby food that's on the top shelf. And then after he hands it to her, she's like, I don't know why they always put it on the top shelf. And I'm like, what is that? Where did that come from? And then there's the guy at the very beginning of the movie, the guy that's working the elevator. Right? Like Fred McMurray's like bleeding out, making his way to his office. And this dude is just talking about how they will never give him insurance because he has a problem with his heart, and just chattering away like he belongs in a different movie, like in an all out comedy. And then you have the guy at the train that kind of ends up becoming a witness, the guy from Oregon, right? Also like played very broadly. It was like, what is going on? Why did they feel the need to introduce these comic relief characters in a movie that doesn't need them? Is it just like a lack of confidence in the material? Like, did it bother you that this was kind of a serious story and then there was just this really weird comedic element thrown in every now and then?
Mm-hmm. It was tonally inconsistent. We talked about that with some of the older movies that we've done too. Of they hadn't figured out tonal consistency yet. I guess the people liked it, but. We talked about that in Jaws many, many moons ago. Rocky also. Just the idea of like, these are really serious subjects at hand, but then we got to inject a little bit of ha-ha for some reason.
It's what people want.
It's what they need.
You don't want to bum them out.
So the claim gets rejected and she immediately counters suit. During this, the insurance company's covering all their bases, and Neff finds a recording of Keyes vouching for him, saying he doesn't need to be investigated or followed in this. There's no connection, yada, yada, yada. And the shame just washes over him. And he's not only realized that he's killed a man, but he also, his best friend, he's betrayed his trust and he'll never get it back.
And then he should have just stopped the recording right then, but he keeps listening. And then the shame washes over him again when he realizes that he's been cucked. That on top of everything, Barbara Stanwyck is hooking up with Nino on the side. The 40-year-old just upgraded from Lola to the stepmom, as we predicted, as we encouraged him to do.
Yeah, there it is, Walter. It's beginning to come apart at the seams already. Murder's never perfect. Always comes apart sooner or later. And when two people are involved, it's usually sooner.
It's time things come to a head, and we see back at Phyllis's home. She's preparing for Walter to come over, and she hides a gun under the cushion in her chair. Walter shows up, and this is really all based around a foot fetish, we find out here, because he just goes back to talking about, I've never stopped thinking about that anklet you were wearing the first time I saw you. So dude likes feet. Cool, man. Everyone's got something. And she hits him, they have this back and forth, this intense dialogue about, you did this, you did that, we did this together. And that's when Phyllis has the best line of the interaction where he says, we're both rotten. We're both to blame. Obviously, she's got a few screws loose, but he killed someone. So she's not wrong in saying that.
He has no moral high ground. He really shouldn't be passing judgment. But also, what was the plan, Alex? Because I know what Phyllis's plan was. She has a gun. She has a gun. And also, that's really weird because the entire movie we're with Neff. We're with Frank McMurray's point of view. And then this last part at the end, we cut to Phyllis's point of view so we can see her hide the gun. It's like unnecessary, and it kind of like the movie breaking its own rules, because we could have just had Fred McMurray arrive to the house and then we see he turns and we find out that she has a gun at the same time that he does.
She also
But-
has the gun like wrapped in cloth, so I assumed she was gonna like frame him for something, but no, she just shoots him.
And she can't even aim properly. But that's her. What was his plan? Because he didn't bring a gun. Instead, he just comes in and just talks to her for a while about how he probably should kill her. And then he goes and closes the blinds.
Yeah, because he was trying to set up some scenario where her and Nino get caught together and blamed for the murder of Diedrichson. He was
No,
trying
I thought that. But see, I thought that he was going to kill her, and then Nino was going to show up with the police following him, and then the police were going to think that he had killed her, right? Because Nino doesn't know about him, and so by killing Phyllis, then he's completely in the clear.
You're right, because he said he was going to get away with it. So she shoots him in the arm or the shoulder, but it's not enough to, take him down right there. She goes to shoot him again, but has pause. And I think this is the dilemma of the movie. Moralistically, if you're watching this, does she really love him, or what was her... She said she wanted to shoot him, but she just couldn't do it. And she asked him to hold her. And then he shoots her twice.
Like a man.
And says, "Goodbye, baby." She says she's never loved him until a minute ago when I couldn't fire that second shot. As she hugs him, Neff says, "Goodbye, baby," and shoots her twice, killing her.
He jumped the shark for you there, Alex, where you're like, oh, that's it. I don't want you to get away with it now. Or were you already rooting against him from much earlier?
Well, at this point, I was just like, oh man, is he gone like fully crazy now? And my thought was like, is he going to get away with it? Was he the crazy one all along? Is he going to get away with it? But then he goes outside and Nino shows up and he immediately like goes back to being remorseful and tells Nino to get the fuck out of here. You don't know what's in there and you don't want to know. So here's a nickel.
Go back to Lola.
Here's a nickel. Go buy yourself an apartment.
Go get yourself a girlfriend. The movie paints this as his redeeming moment, right? He just murdered a woman in cold blood, but it's okay because he just allowed this terrible ex-boyfriend to go back to the girl that he was really mean to originally. Like, that's nothing good is coming out of this interaction. Like, Lola should have been happy. Like, Lola was better off without Nino, and he just pushed her back into it. And it's like the movie wants us to cheer him on because of that. He's like, oh, no, see, he's a good guy. He cares for the kids.
And we conclude with where we started as he's recording this confession. And we learn that Barton Keyes has been standing behind him for some time and knows the truth of what happened.
Yeah, he's Neff is finishing up his confession, and then he gets the beep. And it's like, the mailbox you're trying to reach is full.
And he is delirious at this point. He's lost a lot of blood. I mean, he's been recording the story overnight, so he didn't get any medical attention. He's been bleeding for at least an hour and 40 minutes based on what's going on in the movie. And he tells Keyes, I'm getting out of here. I'm fleeing to Mexico. Just give me a little bit of time. But Keyes tells him, you're not even going to make the elevator. And he doesn't. And he's just too weak and he collapses. And Keyes calls an ambulance and he also calls the police, walks back over to a fallen Neff. And they have an exchange of words. Basically, like, I loved you, dude. Sorry it's come to this. And he lights a cigarette for him as we fade to the Paramount logo.
Guys rock.
Dudes rock. That's right.
So is this Dark Knight Rises conundrum, Alex? Are we supposed to wonder forever if Neff made it or if he died before the ambulance showed up?
I didn't consider that. I know that his goose is cooked. He's Dunsky. And,
right. He's going to prison.
Yeah. And he's convinced he's going to get the gas chamber. I know they were a bit more liberal with the death penalty back then, so maybe that's true.
But it could be just that if he can't even make it to the elevator, and like you said, he's been bleeding out the entire time that he's been telling this story. I know that men were a little tougher back in the 40s, but still, I don't think that I assumed that he died. I think there's something very final about that fade to black. There's no Walter Neff will return in Triple Indemnity. And
he's smoking that cigarette in a fashion of like appreciating his last few moments on Earth.
Yes, he's not gonna finish that cigarette. He's just letting it dangle from his mouth. Final point of contention, Alex. I cannot believe you didn't bring this up. Actually, I do, because you just, this was probably too horrible for you to dwell on. But those gunshots, no squibs, no CGI either.
Yeah, the sound added in post-production, very obviously also.
The worst of both worlds. Like when you don't get any of the effects. No practical and no digital. This is just, they might as well been shooting him with her finger. Pow pow.
Well, at least it doesn't have the nerve to like have some computer animated blood squirting out. And it is the implication too. I'm sorry to go back to your point of like how much is implied in this movie. That's where the real damage is done.
Okay, there is a world of difference between them implying that they're having sex but not showing us anything, and them showing us a gunshot, but the gunshot doesn't really happen. It would be like if we saw them having sex, but they still have their clothes on.
Hey, man, I don't know what you wanted them to do in 1944. Imagine you just pulling up being like, where is the goblet of fire? Where is the infinity gauntlet?
Barbara Stanwyck was inevitable.
I guess so. Her skills with men certainly were.
It's infinity anklet.
Yeah, well played.
All right, that was Double Indemnity, the story of a man. The story of a man. That's it. That's how men operate.
Story of men and the power that women hold over them. Now gets to the interesting part. We see if Julio enjoyed a noir. So
all right,
let's move along to real talk.
You know why you couldn't figure this one, Keys? I'll tell you. Because the guy you were looking for was too close. Right across the desk from you.
Closer than that, Walter.
I love you, too.